The following talk is sponsored by the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. If you're watching the video on YouTube, please take a moment and subscribe to the Academy YouTube channel. You can always access the channel by going to classicalliberarts.com/YouTube. We hope that you enjoy the lesson. God bless. Hello, I'm William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and in this video I'd like to take some time to talk to homeschooling parents who are concerned about helping their children complete high school studies with a view to college preparation. As I get into this, I want to talk about this subject from one perspective as a high school administrator preparing students for college admission. And I'd also like to talk about this as a homeschooling father myself, who faces all of the challenges of homeschooling with my own children. What frustrates me, I could say what keeps me up at night sometimes, is a sense that what we're doing with our high school age students is just missing the mark. It's not arranged to prepare our teenage children for the challenges that they're going to face as young adults. It's not preparing them for real-world education and studies. It's not preparing them for life in a free market economy. We're babying them. You know, they're being treated like they're elementary school students. Other people are forced to take responsibility for their studies, and they sort of drag along, being forced to do things by parents, and then many of the kids, if their parents are successful, they get rewarded for their parents' work, and those whose parents don't help them, those kids don't get much of anything. And all of this is bad for the kids. It's bad for the kids to have parents who support and drag them through their high school studies because it's not preparing them for adult life. And it's even worse for kids who don't have parents who know how to drag them through high school studies. They end up even worse. So I'd like to talk about this practically, really practically, because I've been frustrated with this in the life of my own children, even though I've got 4 kids in college right now. My oldest 4 children are all in college and doing well, but I'm just not happy with how Catholic students are being taught through high school and how they're being prepared for real life, because I don't think they're being prepared for real life. So I've been thinking about this and working on a solution with my wife for our own children, because there are a number of principles that I really think need to be established, and if we don't serve these principles, then I think we're not accomplishing the goal of providing our high school age students with a real education. The first thing is that teenage students they're not babies, they're not toddlers. They shouldn't be treated like these helpless little children. They're really young adults. Alexander the Great, for example, led an army at age 16, and he's not a normal child, but the point is that significant things are possible among students once they get into the years of puberty, and we've got to stop treating them like they're these pre-human, fetuses still in development when they're 16, 17, and 18 years old. It's not true. And we can see that because if there's something that they're motivated to do, something they're interested in, all of a sudden, there's all of this adulthood that shows up. But if there's something that is a responsibility that they're supposed to be fulfilling and they're not interested in it, they play this baby role, and parents often go along with it. A good example of this can be seen when kids reach the age to get driver's permits and driver's licenses. All of a sudden, when they have the privilege that's given to mature children to start driving a car, all of a sudden they're ready to claim adult privileges and they're ready to pretend they're adults. But when it's time to study, they go back into baby mode and stick a pacifier in their mouth and pretend they can't do anything. And we see this all the time. We can see kids play sports who can handle all kinds of complex challenges and pressure and stress and competition for some game. But then when it's time to do responsible work in their academic life, they act like they don't understand these things and can't handle pressure. And it's simply an act. It's a game that they play, and parents let them get away with it. Schools let them get away with it. And we need to stop letting them get away with it because it's not good for them, okay? Now, some parents react to this by just, screaming at the kids, punishing them, but they don't provide a solution. So they're just responding to it lazily. They're not solving the problem. There are real problems. There are tools and resources that need to be made available for the kids to use that put all of the responsibility on them, take away all of the excuses, and actually help them. This is helpful for the students. In sports, as an example, they're provided with everything they need. There's rules, there's coaches, there's umpires, there's uniforms, there's teammates and opposing players, and you've got a baseball field, and all of these things are provided, right? The whole environment, the whole situation is provided for, which is one of the reasons why they like it. But then with school, it's often not prepared for sufficiently to accomplish the goals of high school education. And I think we can fix that. This is what I've been working to fix with my own kids, because I want to raise adult men and women. I'm not interested in babysitting 17-year-olds. I have my own life's work to do. My wife has her own life's work to do. And this work of high school study is my children's work to do. And I want them to understand that, to accept that responsibility, and have the resources available to them that will realistically allow them to do it, to fulfill that responsibility. So let me share my thoughts, and I'm sort of testing resources that I'm going to talk about here with my own kids, and as soon as I've become confident with them, I'm going to make them available for anyone who's interested. So bear with me. This might be a lengthy talk because it's complicated, but at the same time, it'll be simple once it's explained. So the first challenge of high school studies is that we've got these young men and women who need to take responsibility for learning. They're rational creatures. They're made in the image of God. They're not oxen. They're not donkeys. They're not meant to bear burdens or to pull plows. They're rational creatures. They're designed to go into the world and use the unique faculties that they've been created with to do God's will. That's what they're created for. They can choose religious life where they devote themselves to religion, or they can choose secular life where they're responsible to undertake the work of the laity, which is to go into the world and direct temporal affairs according to God's will. And notice the key word there is direct temporal affairs. Not to just go and float with the current or do whatever happens to be in practice at the time. They're to go into the world to direct temporal affairs according to God's will. I don't believe that it's necessary for them to be zealous Catholics to fulfill that mission, because people who are not Catholics can do God's will in the world. So I don't concern myself with that as a father. I can't give my children the theological virtues. God claims that as his own prerogative. So I'm left to deal with what is in my control, and what's in my control is not the spiritual life of my children, but their actual habits and behavior within our family life every day. That's in my control. And I believe that it's possible to raise virtuous young adults, even if they choose not to be Catholics, even if they're not devout as Catholics. It's still our duty, and certainly possible for us to raise virtuous young men and women. The world was filled with many virtuous men and women before Christianity even arrived. So When we look at what are called the noble pagans, for example, we find virtuous men and women, and they were trained to be virtuous. And as a parent, I consider my duties to be first to initiate or introduce my children to the Catholic life, and secondly, to train them in virtue, which are two different things. So that's the first thing. The talk about raising saints is unwise, because we don't have the ability to give our children the theological virtues without which there is no Catholicism. So that's the first problem. So I wouldn't get into the raising saints nonsense. I don't think that that's Catholic teaching or reasonable. It's our duty to initiate them into the Catholic faith, to introduce them to Catholicism, to evangelize them, and raise them in an environment where they get a chance to be discipled in the Catholic life. But when they reach age 18, 19, they're going to become legally independent, and they're going to make decisions for themselves. And they're going to make decisions that we may not like. So I don't trouble myself with that stuff. I try to be the best model of Catholicism that I can be. I make sure that while they're subject to me as children, they are made to participate in the sacramental life according to church teaching. They show respect in the home, obey my commands, and so on. But I'm understanding that I'm raising kids who are going to become independent and are going to have to make their own decisions and live their own life without my control. So I want to raise my kids in virtue realistically, but primarily philosophically, and not so much religiously, because, like I said, philosophy is human. Philosophy is common to all men. Philosophy appeals to the faculty of reason, whereas religion appeals to theological virtues which depend on God's grace, may be given at different times in life, may not be given during young adulthood, and therefore the education, I always argue, needs to be philosophical more than religious, because of the reality that their spiritual life is not in our control and is a variable in all this. But anyway, so I want my kids to take responsibility for their learning as rational creatures. So I don't want my wife babying them every day. I don't want my wife chasing them around, making them study. I don't want my wife waking them up in the morning. I don't want my wife checking on them. I don't want to have to check on them. I don't want to have to tell them all day long that they need to study and prepare for their future occupations. I want them to take responsibility for their own life and realize that their life is in their control, and they've got to make the best use of the time they have available, make the best use of the resources they have available, and exhaust themselves every day in preparing as children for their coming adult life. That's what I want them to do. And so when it comes to the method for managing their education, the method for managing their homeschooling, I want a method that actually teaches that, not a method that undermines that or teaches the opposite of that. And that's been my challenge with my own kids, trying to figure out how I can develop a set of tools and resources that puts the pressure on them to take responsibility for their own lives and get an education using the resources that my wife and I make available for them as their parents. So that's the challenge. Now, when we talk about college admission, we're talking about high school diplomas and high school transcripts. And what's needed for a high school diploma, and I'm talking college prep level stuff. I'm not interested in all the ignorant, talk about unschooling and, not caring about college. I think that's foolish. It undermines the whole point of education, and it's simply not how our society works. So I'm assuming we're preparing kids for college, and when we talk about college, we're talking about selective colleges. We're not talking about county college. We're not talking about some private college that's going to accept any kid that applies. We're talking about first level, top rank colleges and universities where kids are going to have great professors, access to great resources, great classmates, and so on. That's the goal of college admission, to get yourself into the highest possible crowd so you enjoy the best resources, the best teachers, the best mentors, the best classmates, the best environment, and so on. So we're looking at a rigorous high school study program that goes above and beyond modern graduation requirements and gives a student everything that they need to gain admission to the most selective colleges and universities. That's the goal. Now, to understand how this works, a high school diploma normally requires quite little. And again, we're going beyond the normal standards. What I look for a high school diploma as a school administrator is I look for 4 years of 5 subjects. The 5 subjects are English, foreign language, math, science, and history, or social studies for the 5th. So English, foreign language, math, science, and social studies. Those are the 5 high school subjects, the 5 real core high school subjects, and they should be studied for 4 years at a high school college preparatory level. Students are expected to earn 1 credit for each of these subjects, so that would be a total of 20 credits. And what a credit means is 120 hours of instructional time, and that includes lectures, that includes class activities that are instructional, it includes class work that's assigned, tests and quizzes would be included in that, all counted as that instructional time. They need 120 hours of instructional time if we're going to be honest Christians. They need 120 hours of instructional time at high school level studies. So that's the challenge. 20 courses, 20 credits, with 1 credit equal to 120 hours of instructional time should be considered a standard college preparatory high school program. Now, the question is how to get students to do this. Okay, how to get students to actually do that. The first thing that I believe we have to do as homeschooling parents is we have to create a transcript. We have to create the transcript, the basic transcript with those courses I just mentioned, and we have to give our children 0 credits for all of those courses, and we have to give them Fs as grades for all of those courses. And they have to look at that transcript and they have to see that as of the time when they begin their high school studies, they have 0 credits and they have a GPA of 0.0. They have an F as their grade point average. Their goal through their high school years is to change that. Their goal is to gain those credits, and their goal is to raise that GPA as high as they can. And they do that by completing those courses. So I really believe the first step is to present to the students the transcript at the beginning with 0 credits and a 0.0 GPA. And put the burden on them to say it's your job over these 4 high school years or however much time you have to change this. It's your job to fill out this transcript, to gain these credits, and to gain them with the highest possible grades. And this is entirely in your control. As a homeschooling student, you're not limited to 180 days of school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. As your parents, we give you all day, all night, every day, all year to work on this for your entire childhood, for as many years as you need. It's your responsibility, but you've got to work on this for 4 years in normal circumstances. And as your parents, we want this to be your first priority and to consider it your full-time job. And we'll support you in this. We're not going to ask you to have part-time jobs. We're not going to ask you to do much else if you're working on this, because this is really the most important part of your preparation for your adult occupational life in a modern, high-tech, competitive, free market economy. So we're going to support you in this. We want you to focus on this, work as hard as you can, and we're going to provide you with all of the resources that you need to do this in the most successful way possible. That's our commitment to your high school education. But you are going to have to take responsibility for it and do the work every day. That's how high school, I believe, should be presented to our children. Now, we've got to provide them with all of the resources and the tools to do this. We've already given them this blank, not blank, but, incomplete transcript with 0 credits and a 0.0 GPA. So they have to think about their studies as gaining credits and gaining grade points as they go along. It's a contest, it's a challenge, and they've got to gain as many credits and as many grade points as they can. And it's all in their control. Now, there's another tool that we need to use, and it's a form that I created, and I'm going to share this, but it's a form that I created that allows them to track their activities in each of these subject areas on the transcript. Because remember, high school credits are a measure of time. It's 120 hours per subject per year. So they need to track their time and what they need to do. Let's take freshman history, for example. In the academy, I recommend that for freshman history, students study ancient history, so world history, but ancient history from the beginning of history until, let's say, the fall of the Roman Empire. That should be freshman history. And then sophomore history should pick up with the fall of the Roman Empire and study the Middle Ages into modern Europe. Then junior year should be American history, and then senior year should be American government. Those would be 4 years of high school social studies. Now, for freshman history, the subject is ancient and classical history. So the students have to be provided with the resources for those studies. In the academy, obviously, we provide online courses for those studies. But there's more things. There's YouTube videos. There's online course videos that can be watched. There's books that can be read, and so on. What's most important is the time spent on the subject, quality academic time spent learning the subject. And so I have a form that I made for my children where they write the date in one form for one of those subjects. They write the date. They write an explanation of the activity that they performed and how much time they spent on that activity, usually in increments of 1 hour. And then at the end of the day, they present that form to me. I check to see what they claim as having done for that hour, and if it's a quality hour of instructional time at the high school level, I put my initials on it, and that counts as 1 hour. And so they understand that they have to do that, and they have to collect 120 hours of activity in that subject. Now, they can simply go through one of our online courses and do it that way, but as I said, they can combine different things. They can do our online world history course while also watching videos about different periods of world history. That's fine. That timesheet can be used to record the hours, and their goal is to get 120 hours, and it's in their control. They have to do it. They have to do the work. We provide them with the resources they need, and then they report to us, show us what they've done, and we confirm that it's quality time spent. It's not just, wasted time. It's got to be something that's measurable. And if it is, and it's high school quality work, we sign it off, and that counts their hours. And then they've just got to do that until they acquire those hours. And when they've acquired 120 approved hours in that subject, they get that credit for that subject on their high school transcript. And they get to work on the other courses. And that's how the high school studies go. As far as their grades go, there have to be measurable activities. That's why I recommend using our online courses, which are going to be designed to work with this system because they're self-paced. And the kids can combine multiple courses in a certain course. But you've got our online quizzes, our online assessments, which provide grades. And so you can take, for the credit, you can take the time that's been completed. When 120 hours are completed, you can give the kids the credit for that course. And then for their grade for that course, you can simply pull their average for that subject based on the activities that they've done. And of course, as a homeschooling parent, you can assign any grade you'd like. You can give your kid an A on his transcript, and you have the authority to do that because it's your school. So what I advise parents is to think about, normal high school students, or think about your own high school experience and ask yourself, how does your child's knowledge of this subject or what your child has done in this subject compare to what you did in that subject? How does it compare to what other kids are doing in that subject area? And you're free to assign a grade. Now, there could be a situation where someone at a college admissions office or something like that asks for some evidence, and you would need to supply that evidence. If you've got these forms and if you've got these online assessment records, you've got the evidence, so you don't need to worry about that. But as a homeschooling parent, you need to feel free to assign your kids grades based on your own judgment, with the help of objective measures and quizzes and things like that to support the grade that you give. You evaluate the student's achievement and then make sure that you have some evidence that supports that evaluation. So the kids have these timesheets that they fill out, and it's just that simple. I also have a form that I made for my sons, so if they want to do something like watch the great courses or they want to watch a YouTube video on a certain topic, they have a form that they've got to complete, which is like an assessment for the activity. And so, watching a video is not going to be given credit as an hour of instructional time. If you're going to claim something for instructional time, I want to see proof that you were paying attention. I want to see proof that you learned the lesson, and you're going to show me that by completing a form that requires you to write an outline of what was covered, answer some other questions, and so on. So there's a form that I've created for any activity the kids do like that. Any activity that they want to claim outside of their CLAA courses, any activity that they want to claim, they have to complete a form that's the assessment for that activity in order to get credit for that hour as an hour of instructional time. Not TV watching, not putting a video on while you go get a cup of coffee. That's not instructional time. If there's going to be a claim for instructional time, you need to show proof that you were paying attention and following the lesson. Okay, so there's a separate form for that. If you think about that system, how it puts the burden on the students to take responsibility, provides them with a variety of resources to choose from to make use of in their studies, and gives them the tools that they need to record everything that they do and get credit for it, and also that gives you as the homeschool parent the records to verify everything that you claim on their behalf. You'll see that, I think I can say that it's really a bulletproof system that doesn't merely, check boxes of a high school diploma. It leaves it wide open. The kids can go as far as they want. They can add as many subjects as they want to their transcript. They can go into as many different subjects and studies as they want. They can pursue college-level instruction in these subjects, and they should be encouraged to do so. But it allows them to get credit for what they do, and it, most importantly, it puts the burden on them and says, go, get yourself a high school education, aim as high as you can, do and learn as much as you can, and you'll be rewarded at the next level. And it puts that pressure on them and takes all excuses away. For example, if you're homeschooling, I'm sure that you know that your kids can waste whole days doing nothing. They can be given books, they can have access to websites and resources, and they can spend a whole day and not do a single thing. If they choose to do that, there's going to be a record of it. You're going to have this form where they track their hours of activity, and it's just going to be blank. And it's going to be very pathetic to have this 16, 17, 18-year-old boy sitting there with a blank sheet. And just all excuses are going to be taken away. And you need to do that. You need to make sure he sees that there's no way to wiggle out of this. He has a very simple system to make use of, a very simple tool to make use of, and it's blank. And there's no one to blame for that but him. All the resources have been provided. He has access to lessons and assessments and tests and quizzes. videos, whatever he liked, books, whatever. And he simply is not doing the work. And then when it's time, when kids are in their freshman and sophomore year of high school, they really can't see what's coming, and it's difficult to get them to study, which is why you need to use artificial rewards. So keep that in mind. But when they get to junior and senior year, they start seeing friends or other siblings go to college and things like that, and they start to feel the pressure that they're not prepared, and they start to learn what's necessary. For example, my sons all want to be in the military, and so they go and talk to recruiters, and they go in there fit and strong and courageous, thinking that these military recruiters are just going to fawn over them and be so excited that these strong, healthy kids are eager to join the military. And they find that the recruiters ask them about their high school studies. And so they go there and they get humbled because they've been neglectful or they've been lazy and they don't have much to show for it. Or the recruiter asks to see a transcript or a report card. And I say, sure, you want to see a transcript from my son? Here it is. It's empty because he doesn't do his schoolwork. I want them to take responsibility for that and prepare a transcript that they can be proud of. So if you push back on the kids and make them take responsibility, you're going to find support for you, the parent, from college institutions, military recruiters, employers, and so on. So when they talk about what they want to do at the next level, they're going to see that everyone is going to ask about academics, and they are not prepared. And we want to have them understand that that preparation is completely in their control, and there's nothing keeping them back from blowing through it if they want to. If you think about 5 subjects a day, most schools only devote about 40 minutes to each subject. That's 200 minutes of instructional time per day in a modern school. That's, 3.5 hours of instructional time. It's almost nothing. If you spend 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a day doing academic work that gets you credit, you can blow through grades in months rather than in an entire year. So it really gives the kids a challenge and sets the whole thing before them, and the opportunities they have are limitless because everything they do that's high school study quality can get onto their transcript, and they need to take responsibility for that. So I've developed the tools to do this, and I'm working on it with my own sons. Like I said, I'm a busy man. I homeschool my kids, and I consider it to be an act of generosity to them, to protect them from lots of undesirable experiences that would just hinder and distract them from preparing for their adult lives. But I have work to do. I don't get free food and housing because I've chosen to homeschool. I've got to provide for my family of 12, and I've got to do so through my vocation of education, which is very challenging. I'm working with 3,000 students in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy while doing research, directing the development and restoration of the classical liberal arts curriculum. I've got all day, everyday work to do. I'm not going to baby and track kids around the house who are supposed to be studying. I've got a system to manage it, and they're accountable to that system, and that's it. My wife, at the same time, she's a Catholic woman. She has her own vocation. She has her own activity to do. She, like me, is a lay Dominican. She has her own promises that she's made to pray and study and do other apostolic work as a lay Dominican. She's also my assistant in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. She's also engaged in her own academic studies privately, and her work as a homeschooling mother is part of what she does. But it's not her full-time job. She has other things to do as well, and the kids have no excuse for not being able to get their studies done because we provide them with help, we provide them with resources, we provide them with tools, and we're going to keep them accountable to take responsibility for their own studies as members of a family, where mom and dad, as much as we're homeschooling parents, or also other things as well. You know, they also want Christmas presents in December. They also want new shoes. They also want help with car payments and things like that. Well, those things don't come from homeschooling. And so helping kids to understand the balance of life and the need to take responsibility for everyone to bear his own burden, those are important moral lessons that need to be taught through homeschooling, and I don't think that they are often taught in homeschooling. I think homeschooling allows kids to get away with behavior that's not virtuous, and they're not growing in this sense of independence and responsibility. So there is a way to do this. I think I've got the details just about worked out, and I think that you'll find them very helpful if you share my principles. If you don't, they're not for you, so it's no big deal. But if you do share my concerns about raising kids with virtue, especially teenage kids who are old enough to understand and do these things, I'm going to be posting, after I post this video, I'm going to be sharing the resources on the Academy website that I've created for use with my own kids, which, you know, I've gotten a thumbs up from them as they use them. They like them. I can see in them that it's a relief to them, that they feel like this gives them the ability to actually understand and do these things and take responsibility for it. So I've got approval from them. I've also gotten approval from my wife, who's sort of worked as a mediator between me and them, getting them started with these tools. And then, you know, I'm very happy with them as well because of the changes that I've already seen, and I trust we'll continue to see, because this has been a concern of mine. Even though I've successfully prepared students in the past for college admission and their military careers, and they're doing great, I just haven't been satisfied with the way that we've done it. I haven't been satisfied with the burden that it's placed on me and my wife. I haven't been happy with how much my children have been allowed to be irresponsible and still get rewards in the end. I want them to learn virtue through their education, and we can't do it the way that most homeschools and most modern schools work. We've got to put the burden on them and teach them why it's in their interest to bear that burden gladly and to complete as much academic work as they can, to seek out the most rigorous academic opportunities they can and get all that stuff onto their transcripts. And we've given them the tools, and we're willing to provide for the resources for them to do that. So this video was the first part of my introduction of these resources that I'm going to share, and once I get them posted on the Academy website, I think you'll have some questions about how to use them and things like that, and you can get in touch with me then. One thing that I would like to do is to schedule a parent meeting, a Zoom meeting on maybe a Thursday evening where we can just discuss these things and talk practical about homeschool parenting. So if that's of interest to anyone, just let me know, and we'll schedule a parent meeting. But I'd like you to think about these things, check out the resources that I share, and then if you start to use them and new concerns or questions arise, I'd like to know about them so that we can improve these things and help our kids, because they need a lot of help. So I hope that's helpful. God bless. The Classical Liberal Arts Academy works to research, restore, publish, and teach the classical Catholic curriculum enjoyed by wise men and saints throughout history. To join us for classical Catholic studies or to learn more about the programs available, visit classicalliberalarts.com.